Good afternoon. It's always an interesting challenge to try and keep people awake after what must have been a good lunch. So I'll just spend a few minutes talking about the consumer goods industry, first of all, in India, where we are today, and then a little bit of information about GCPL, and then we'll try and reserve a decent amount of time for Q&A as well. And also in the middle, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt us. You know, about 12 or 13 months ago, when we would do presentations about the sector, me and my peers would always gloat a little bit and say, you know, economy's been slowing down, but we are a defensive, resilient sectors. And all of us were very confident that FMCG could withstand any kind of stresses in the system. But I think all of us ate the humble pie starting about a year ago, when we realized that even we couldn't defy the laws of economic gravity. And I think the sector's gone through a fair amount of turmoil over the last 12 months. And frankly, the pace of turmoil has surprised all of us. We never quite thought that FMCG in India would slow down the way it had, and how quickly it decelerated. I'll show you some of the data. But the good news is, I think the breaks were quite temporary, and at least I am personally very hopeful that we are starting to see the early signs of revival, because the lag effect took quite a few years before it impacted FMCG. I think the recovery will still take time, but at least I'm quite optimistic that we are now trending in the right direction. And I'll show you some data as to why I believe that to be the case, and why I'm feeling more optimistic now than ever before in terms of our prospects going forward for the industry. As I was mentioning to you, this probably has been the slowest period of growth in FMCG in over a decade. The last time you saw this kind of slowdown was FY03-04, and then you saw what had been a fairly good boom years starting from FY05, where growth started at 11%, and it's been fairly consistent in the mid to high teens. But if you take a look at fiscal year 14, it was back to 11%. But if you look at the first 2 quarters of fiscal year 15, growth actually came down to mid-single digits. So a fairly dramatic slowdown that I think caught a fair number of us by surprise. And this is across all the various categories. Clearly, food, which tends to be less discretionary, has done better. But apart from food, whether it's HPC, home and personal care, oral care, hair care, they've all seen fairly big challenges. Over-the-counter OTC has done well because the base is still quite low. And this growth has actually impacted both rural and urban. So what's quite clear is that rural continues to grow faster. But if you look at the growth rates in the first, last year, you had urban growing about 7 to 8%, rural was almost low double digits. If you look at the last 2 quarters, the blue bar is urban, 2% growth in urban, rural between 5 to 8% growth. So rural still seems to be growing a lot faster than urban, but again, much slower than what it was growing before. The big challenge, I think, for all of us has been really volume growth. So on the left side, we see the category volume growth. And take a look at what began really happening in the quarter of last year onwards. Last 3 quarters, volume growth has actually been negative in home and personal care. So almost -2% kind of negative volume growth. Whereas value growth has come down, but it's largely all through price increases that we've seen a certain amount of growth. And that always is a very disturbing trend in terms of, when volume growth was negative, it means that people are consuming less so People are consuming less shampoo. People are actually consuming less kind of toothpaste in the industry. But what's at least giving us some pause of optimism is I'm showing you data from the industry on a month-over-month basis. And at least if you look at, the blue line is urban, the black line is over home and personal care, and the green lines, you can start seeing sequentially every month now seems to be getting better than the previous month. And in September, rural value growth was almost 10%, urban was still 3.3. But at least you are now beginning to start seeing the first signs of an economic revival, and the deceleration in volume growth seems to have come down. I think it's still largely price-led growth, but at least the deceleration in volume growth seems to have come down. If you take a look at the data over the last three months. And generally, the one question people ask is it driven by the festival season? While that partially might be the case, I think if I look at the data also for the last 6 weeks, it seems to be trending in the right direction. And I think the reason why we feel optimistic that perhaps the worst is over is that if you start taking a look at consumer confidence, there has been a fair increase in consumer confidence over the last couple of quarters at least. And typically, consumer confidence tends to be a leading indicator. Normally we've seen is that better consumer confidence starts translating into better income in about 2 or 3 quarters. That leads to better spending power. So some of the improvement in consumer confidence, you'll see that reflecting going forward in terms of slightly better consumer demand as well. And the reality is all of us know is that I think fortunately this break is a temporary one. And these are some of the categories we play in, but across most categories, what you still find in India is that there's still tremendous headroom for growth. This is on a penetration basis. So if you look at penetration of hair colors, insecticides versus other emerging markets geographies, there's still a huge opportunity for growth as far as increasing penetration in India in home and personal care is concerned. And particularly if you look at rural versus urban, so hair colors penetration in rural is still 26%, insecticides 28%. So massive opportunities in rural in particular to drive penetration, but there's opportunity in urban as well. And if you shift to the urban side, there are still massive opportunities to drive consumption. This is consumption per capita for insecticides and hair colors across Thailand, Malaysia, China, Indonesia. And you can start seeing versus a lot of these geographies, even our consumption per household has a significant amount of opportunity to continue growing. So structurally, there is nothing of concern with the Indian, I think, FMCG industry. There was a bit of a break, just given the economic environment. The other critical point is that if you look at the salience of premium products, and premium is defined, it's a Nielsen definition on products that are priced at 20% more than the category average. So if you look at the salience of premium, it's only about 19%. In most comparable markets in the world, the percentage of premium is about 35 to 40%. So still a huge opportunity to offer consumers increasing reasons to buy higher benefit products and pay a little bit more. And what's amazing is if you look at the growth in premium, it's not just an urban story. The contribution to premium is coming from metros, obviously 30%, but tier 1 cities, rural, tier 2 cities. So across the board, you are seeing an increasing desire for consumers to pay a little bit more to get better packaging, better features, etc. So this is going to be another big area of, I think, our focus going forward in terms of how do we premiumize the portfolio. So that's a quick snapshot of the overall industry dynamics. As I mentioned, while we've gone through a tough period, Structurally, the potential for India still seems to be extremely positive, and we have now begun to see some early signs of a revival. Let's see how the next couple of quarters go, but we at least are quite optimistic that even this year, the second half of the year should be better than the first half, and then the real story will start probably next year onwards. Just a few minutes on Godrej Consumer. This is our 10-year track record. We've grown our revenues by over 15 times over the last 10 years, with 30% growth in revenues and an almost similar kind of growth as far as operating profits are concerned. And what's been remarkable about this story is the way we've transformed our business. So about 5 years ago, 80% of our business was India focused. Now half of our business actually comes from outside India, largely emerging markets, and over the last few years, our international portfolio, which has largely been acquisition driven, has been growing much faster than our India portfolio. The last 6 months have been challenging for us, like most other FMCG companies. You can see the challenges we faced as far as our sales growth was concerned, though we've tried to make sure that our profit growth was ahead of our sales growth. And what's comforting for us is that in spite of a slowing economic environment and slowing category growth rate, we've been growing at almost 2 times the category growth rate. So historically, we've grown at about 1.5, 1.6 times category growth rate. Over the last 2 or 3 quarters, we've actually grown much faster than the category, which means that our shares have increased. So in spite of a slowing environment, we've become much more competitive, much more stronger as a company. And so as the economic growth returns back, our platform today is probably more stronger than it's ever been before. And part of the reason why we've outperformed category growth rate is that we've been a very focused company. We're a home and personal care company, largely focused on 3 broad categories. Insecticides is about 45% of our business. This is India. Hair colors is 12%. Soaps about 35%. So largely a 3-category play. Across our geographies, India, as I mentioned, was about half of our business. Internationally, Indonesia is the largest market, 38%. Africa is about 28%. Those are our 2 big international markets. LATAM and UK are in the teens. What also I think differentiates us is that we, along with focus, we've made sure that we participate in areas where we have clear leadership positions. And so we've tried to maintain and extend our leadership even in the difficult times. So in India, we are number 1 in hair colors, number 1 in insecticides, number 2 in soaps. Indonesia, number 1 in air fresheners, number 2 in insecticides. Across SAARC, across UK, Latin America, number 1 in hair color, the geographies we participate in. In Africa, also number 1 in hair care. So across the board, we've tried to keep our portfolio very focused, and in the categories we participate in, we make sure we're differentiated and we have clear leadership positions. And I was mentioning to you, if you look at the changes in our share, we've had a few challenges in soaps, which is now back on a recovery path. But across both hair colors and insecticides in India, we've actually gained a significant amount of share over the last 12 months. One of the key reasons why we've been able to gain share, along with, I think, great execution, has been our innovation story. We've been focused a lot on bringing new products and new brands to the market. And if you look at the salience of a new product in our portfolio, it's jumped up significantly. If you look at the salience of premium products in our portfolio, that's gone up quite a lot as well. So premiumization, innovation has been a big focus area for us. And we've launched a range of innovations, whether it is a new health and wellness platform called Protect with hand sanitizers, mosquito sprays, new soaps to enter the germ protection space with Synthol, air fresheners under a brand called Air, significant renovations and innovations in our portfolio under the Goodnight brand. I'll just show you a couple of ads of a couple of our launches in a couple of minutes. In hair colors, we were non-existent in the creme format. We were a powder player. We entered creme about a little over 2 years ago. We are now the largest selling creme in India by number of units in over a 2-year period of time. About 11 months ago, we launched a very disruptive mosquito repellent format, a paper-based product called Fast Guard. You just burn this paper. In a couple of minutes, the paper burns, and it gives you 4 to 6 hours of relief. In about 11 months, it's become an 100 crore brand. Probably one of the fastest SKUs to reach 100 crores in less than a year. Is the sound working? No? Let me just see. No, I'll just try and show you. Sound है कि नहीं इसमें? No sound? Leave it, I can skip it. You can connect here. Yes. Any question in the meantime while they do this? We can get back to this. Girish has some questions, I'm sure. Yeah, sure.
So Vivek, last time when we met, you were the chief strategist for the Godrej Group.
Right.
And last 18 months you have been spearheading a large consumer group. What have been your biggest accomplishments in last 18 months, and what have been the big challenges?
I think the big accomplishments, obviously it's never fun to take on a new role, when the situation has been sliding down from an economic perspective. I think the biggest accomplishments really have been our focus on market share. I think in this kind of situation, there's enough confidence in our business that our brands are quite strong. How we navigate the downturn and emerge stronger, I think is something I feel very proud about. Second is the team has stuck together and we have a fantastic team. Third is international has been going reasonably well. We have a fairly complex portfolio in Africa now, some very difficult geographies. And how we're integrating them, I actually think Africa will be a big game changer for us. So international has gone off quite well. I think the challenge again is, when you're used to 15-20% growth, and that comes down to 5 or 6% in a quarter for the industry, how you think about resilience and what I call ruthless execution is always a big challenge, because I think growth hides lots of problems in life, and all of us get a little bit lazy when the going is good. So in some ways it was very humbling, but it's allowed us to really get our business model at a far stronger position than ever before. Are we ready? Yes. Let me just show you one of our latest ads.
न डर किसी का आज मानेंगे हम ना हार, न डर किसी का आज एक दिन और जर्म्स का डट कर सामना करें। नया सिंथॉल कॉन्फिडेंस प्लस 99.9% जर्म प्रोटेक्शन सोप इंस्टा डियो फ्रेग्रेंस के साथ। सिंथॉल अलाइव इज ऑसम।
So in the soap market, almost 25% of the Indian soap market is germ protection. We never really had a very compelling play there. So one of our big forays now is to participate much more actively in germ protection. The next ad is of our Fast Cut product.
हाथ जोड़ के ना सच्चे दिल से दुआ करो, सब भाग जाएंगे।
ट्राई कर लो।
गुड नाइट एडवांस्ड फास्ट कार्ड, फोल्ड किया, चलाया, फूंक किया, हो गया। इसके TFT मॉलिक्यूल्स पटाख से मच्छरों पे असर करेंगे।
देखा, सुन लेना भगवान ने।
टेबल के नीचे से ना।
गुड नाइट एडवांस्ड फास्ट कार्ड, पटाख से फुर्र।
This is our most recent launch. In the soap category, the soap category is about 14 or 15,000 crores. Face washes are almost 1,500 crores in size. It's becoming a very big segment. We've just launched our a face wash. It's in the market starting this week. Very disruptive format, fantastic quality. Typically, face washes are at about 50 rupees or above for a small tube. Ours is 30% lower in price. We've also launched a multi-use sachet with a resealable tube format, with a resealable opening there for 10 rupees, which a consumer can use for at least 10 to 12 uses. So we're very optimistic that this will allow us to extend our Godrej #1 brand beyond soaps into face washes as well. One of our other recent launches has been a more premium play with a brand called BBlunt. BBlunt is probably India's most well-known premium salon, largely in metro cities. We've worked with BBlunt over the last 2 years or so to develop a range of products for Indian hair. It's a salon-inspired brand that will be sold in retail. The ramp-up is quite slow, but I think if we do this well, this could be a fantastic brand, world-class packaging, amazing products, the full range that you can see. And we've never really played much in premium before. This will allow us to experiment and learn a lot in terms of serving the needs of the premium consumer. I'll show you an ad which hasn't gone out in the market yet, but I'll give you a sense of the BBlunt products.
I need to do something to my hair, like now. Long overdue. Should I go short? Can I go short? Like Pixie short or Rihanna short? Yeah, like I could carry off paint. Well, why the hell not? Oh God, no. Who am I kidding? No, no, no. What about a fringe? A side swept fringe? A straight fringe? A Michelle Obama fringe? That made the news. Oh, should I just add color? Temporary hair color. What's the half and half deal? Umber, ombre, umbra. Maybe I don't need to go so far out. I mean, I have a boyfriend. Maybe just below my shoulders, safe. Can wear it up, can let it down. But am I worth it? What I really need are layers. Yes, I need volume. Should I get some extensions? Or maybe try some curls? Be the odd girl out. Nope, curls get way too frizzy. I think I'll just shave it all off. But what if my head looks weird? My head does look weird. Maybe I'll just get a bob. Will it make my face look fat? What do you do with the bob when you don't like it anymore? God, I need to do something to my hair.
Obviously, behind all this brand building innovations, a lot of work has gone on to improve our distribution, rural footprints. The productivity of our sales team has gone up significantly. So a lot of the plumbing from an execution perspective has really been tightened over the last 12 months or so. With our international acquisitions now, we are spending a lot of time in enhancing our global supply chain. So global sourcing, implementation of ERP, improving efficiencies across the board has been a big area of our focus. And none of this happens, I think, without having exceptional people. And what's been amazing is that consistently we've been ranked among the best FMCG companies to work for in every single survey that we participate in, whether it's Aeon, Hewlett, Great Place to Work, etc. So I think ultimately, any success depends on having a fantastic team, and this is one area we've invested a lot of our time on. Let me pause there, and now I think we can answer any questions.
Thanks, Vivek, for a very insightful and interesting presentation. I must compliment you for the interesting ads as well. You have been, GCPL has been positioning itself as an emerging market consumer company. And you know, most of your acquisitions have done well, very value accretive. How do you see opportunities, different opportunities in India versus opportunities in say Africa, Indonesia or Americas? And do you see any new geographies you would like to enter in future?
You know, this is an area we obviously think a lot about. Ultimately, I think the rationale for acquisitions is not that we don't see enough growth in India. The reality is that there is tremendous growth in India, but one has to be careful about what categories we choose and participate in. And so for us, I think the key is to choose a few categories, and in the categories that we are in, we definitely want to have a leading position. And our thinking of international was, look, apart from India, where there is still exciting growth available, there will be lots of other emerging markets geographies where you will start seeing consumers with the same kind of aspirations and income that India has seen over the last 10 or 20 years. And so our model of affordable, superior quality products could be leveraged across multiple geographies as well. That's really what led to our story, which is about emerging markets, largely in categories that we have a differential leading position in. You know, having said that, I think at this stage where we are, Girish, is we are seeing a huge amount of growth in India, Indonesia and Africa. So if we were to prioritize, I think, and that's almost 80% of our portfolio today, our thinking is that we would want to keep very focused in these three markets. If we find acquisitions to further turbocharge our growth rates in these geographies, it's fantastic. Organically, I think our portfolio can deliver us 16 to 18% growth over the next 3 to 5 years. Anything more that comes would be gravy through acquisitions, but at least for the next few years, we would prefer remaining focused on these geographies and not open up any new frontiers. If a dream acquisition comes down the road, we would look at it, but our bias would be let's stick to these geographies. You know, and the good thing is, if I look at our current footprint, we cover a population of almost over 2 billion in the world. That's enough opportunity for us for the next few years to keep ourselves busy.
So with that, may I open this Q&A session to all of you. Kindly identify yourself and you may ask questions, whatever, to Vivek.
Hi, sir.
Yeah.
I think the Rotary Club is of the group vision of 10 by 10.
Yeah.
And my assumption is that GCPL, will play an integral part of that.
Yeah.
So where do you so how do you see GCPL effectively in 2020? So if you just share your thoughts on that.
See, from my perspective, 10 by 10 is a great aspiration to have. It's a fantastic goalpost, but honestly, it's dependent on two things. One is ensuring profitable returns. It's very, very well in our emerging markets. I can see our current portfolio stretching to about 20% growth. 16 to 18% is at least something which seems doable, but up to 20 with a little bit of luck is possible. Beyond that, it's all about acquisitions, and honestly, our team has no M&A targets. If we find a couple of major acquisitions, I think it's fantastic. If 10 by 10 gets delayed by a couple of years as far as GCPL is concerned, so be it. I think it's much more important to have that goalpost as an aspiration, but not make it a target, because the wrong behavior can happen. So for us, it's an aspiration. We are serious about it, but honestly, a chunk of that is the gap, which I don't know today how we will end up filling.
So you guys actually have done very well over the last 4 or 5 years.
That's well, exactly. So,
Exactly, yeah.
we've done quite well, and we'll hopefully continue, that momentum going forward.
Hi, sir. Just a few things from my end. Firstly, just wanted to understand, you had a slide on route to market.
Right.
And, in India, a lot of things are changing in terms of route to market. It changed with modern retail over the last 8-10 years. now with chemist channels becoming more important,
Right.
with e-commerce becoming a play, with salon already for you very important. You know, where do you see this moving for the next 3 to 5 years for the industry as well as for you, at least in India?
You know, it's going to become far more nuanced and far more segmented than it's ever been before. But, you know, India's never been one country either, right? There have been so many Indias, you know, urban Indias, so many rural Indias. And so all of us have been quite adept at navigating complexity. It's going to get much more complex than ever before. Proliferation of different channels, different segments, which is going to make our jobs quite interesting. But I think the more we can use IT, the more we can cultivate loyal distributors, those things will become far more important than what it was before. I also feel that in home and personal care, you will start seeing more consolidation that will start happening amongst categories. One is with GST, you will start seeing a lot of players whose business model was based on tax avoidance. Some of the regional players will not be able to sustain themselves going forward. That will be one positive movement. Second is, I think in the near term at least, television will still be the best way to start building national brands. And so the cost of national brand building will only increase over time. And you will start seeing even rural consumers. See, the difference in rural versus other markets in the world is that people in rural India want the same brands, they want the same quality, but they can't afford the same price point. So there will be a convergence towards national brands, bigger brands, and as the cost of brand building goes up, at least my hypothesis is that you will start seeing a first wave of consolidation happening over the next few years, and the bigger brands will start, you know, benefiting. You're already seeing in modern retail, even in urban areas, a lot of chains are saying, I only want to keep 2 or 3 brands now for a particular category. So there's already enough pressure going on in terms of modern retail also saying, we don't want to keep too many brands in our shelves. So the whole idea of ROI and optimization of space is beginning to happen. That will trigger, I think, a wave of consolidation, particularly in home and personal care. Food might be different, I think. The dynamics will be a bit different, but the entry barriers will keep on going up and up, I think, in home and personal care.
It's very interesting. So just one more thing on Synthol. You know,
Yes.
The ad was very interesting.
Right.
But what caught my eye was the communication, slightly different from fresh to germ protection.
Correct.
And it has been fresh for the last so many years.
Correct.
I know germ protection is a huge market to address.
Correct.
But how difficult do you think is this transition to communicate to a loyal Synthol consumer as well as someone who's coming into the brand? Going forward, your thoughts?
It's a big challenge. It's a big challenge because this is such a well-known historic brand, and well-known brands also have legacies, right? We're trying to circumvent that by really having advertising focused on specific variants. So it's still hard-hitting. It's not your boring germ protection, medicinal kind of an imagery we're creating. The premises around Alive is awesome. So it's a much more youthful feel, perhaps a little bit more towards males, you can see there. But that's going to be the biggest marketing challenge, is how do you straddle across, 3 or 4 different propositions for the brand. But I think that's something we are working towards. I'm fairly hopeful that we'll be able to crack this.
Any other question?
This is regarding your international operations. I think there was a slide on your ranking for various product categories.
Right.
If I remember right, it was only in Indonesia that your hair color brand has not been, I think, number 1 or number 2.
We don't have hair colors in Indonesia quite as yet.
So why is it? And it's a big market in terms of your international mix.
Yes. This is something we're evaluating very closely to better understand the potential of the hair color market in Indonesia. Typically, generally in more Muslim populations, the size of the hair color market tends to be somewhat smaller, because I think there is some belief among certain sections of the Muslim population that the Quran actually does not allow the use of hair colors during prayer time. So just there is a market dynamic situation which is much more driven by the Muslim population in Indonesia, which makes the per capita consumption smaller than other markets. I think having said that, it is an interesting opportunity that we are evaluating fairly closely. See, part of our initial strategy is that typically most of our international presence has been through acquisitions. So we first spend the first 2 or 3 years really ensuring that the integration is smooth and that the existing brand portfolio is operating, and we accelerate the growth in the base portfolio. Once that's done, we start looking at newer categories. So Indonesia, we've been in the market for a little over 3 years now. Now is the time for us to think about new category expansion.
So Vivek, you mentioned in the presentation that rural demand still continues to be robust, right? But we have seen MSPs not increasing
That's right.
as they used to increase.
Right.
And the new government will link Narega to productivity, etc. What bearing it will have on the rural demand?
See, our expectation is that in the near term, over the next couple of quarters, we should see at an industry level rural growth of 8 to 10%, which is still much lower than what the growth has been in the past. As you were saying, Girish, there are some structural changes that are happening in the rural market, which will make Q3 reasonably okay. You will see better growth, I think, in Q4 and Q1. One reason is that the government has tightened a lot of its NREGA subsidies. We also have a new rural development minister who's just come into place, right? There was the initial talk about focus on 200 districts. Now there's some back and forth that's been going on. But the NREGA subsidies are being tightened to link it up more towards using it in productive asset utilization. So what the government is saying, rather than give someone just a subsidy, I want to see people actually contribute towards, say, road building or infrastructure building. But those policies haven't yet been fully clarified. Second is, because of inflation being under control, the whole historic expectation of inflation and MSP increases have again gotten tightened. Add to it the fact that monsoon was delayed, and if you look at area under acreage for rice, cotton, soybean, it's actually been okay, but generally it's been coming down, which is why Q3 I think should be more status quo. You might see a marginal improvement, but you will not see too much of improvements in Q3 as far as rural demand is concerned. But at least, our agri teams tell us that this year there ought to be a bumper crop for Rabi, which would be largely wheat related. So particularly if that happens in parts of North India, which actually saw the most deficiency in rainfall in the early part of the year, you could start seeing improvements, particularly in northern rural India, from Q4 onwards. But I think the Baisakhi season, which is more Q1, you will see a bigger benefit. But towards the latter half of this year and the first part, rural demand should be slightly better. But Q3, I don't see much of a change. But longer term, if the government can find ways to drive more productive asset utilization in rural India by generating more income, more employment for people to start working in road building, infrastructure development, that will again create a massive impetus for rural. But I think that more of that will happen next year, not necessarily this year.
Thanks, Vivek. Any other questions? So maybe I'll take this opportunity to ask you some questions.
Sure.
GCPL has been focusing on innovation as a growth strategy, right? And with this, market situation where there's a pressure on the margins, do you think it's sustainable over a long time to spend that type of money on innovation?
You know, we don't have a choice, I'll be honest with you. I think at the end of the day, our long-term success will rely on consumers continuing to seek more products for us. Indian consumers want variety, they want better benefits. And so for us, the belief has been, look, this is a very temporary slowdown. Things are picking up again. The fundamentals in terms of penetration, consumption, all the data I showed you is so positive in India that if we look at the business over the longer term, obviously what we are doing is being far more prudent about cost in the near term. We are finding cost reduction projects. So even in our India business, we have a project called Project Pi, Pi for Profit Improvement, and we're targeting 200 crores of savings through various cost reductions in the next 18 months. But 80 crores should come this year, 120 crores should come next year. So the idea is, let's find ways to drive the cost structure down, but let's not slow down the pace of innovation. Because we know that it's only a matter of time before things will pick up again. And we want to be in a position where we are ahead of our competition. And so there's been no slowdown in the innovation rate. Obviously, depending on the environment, we might calibrate how many launches we are doing. But in terms of readiness, we are fully geared up to continue the momentum we've created as far as innovation is concerned.
Maybe the last question from my side. In your eyes, any other consumer sector company has done well for itself?
No, there are, players have generally done quite well. I think they've done quite well in terms of, navigating the slowdown. Obviously, some players who have a more diverse portfolio tend to do better in some ways during difficult times because they have lots of avenues for growth. But I think longer term, I still feel focus is what will drive long-term success. So near term, any company with a diverse portfolio will see better growth. But longer term, I still feel that players who are much more focused will be the ones who will be the winners.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.